This video was made possible by PIA, more on this in a moment. Hey there, Visualeconomik viewers. The United States of America is under threat of losing both its economic and military dominance in the coming decades. The relationship between the US and China is more tense than ever, and one of the main examples can be seen in the microchip and semiconductor sector. This sector is one of the most formidable weapons that the great powers have for staying in power. This is something we have seen, for example, in the war in Ukraine. If Ukraine is resisting the Russian military onslaught, it is thanks to cutting-edge technologies such as HIMARS missile launchers and state-of-the-art drones. Well, these technologies need microchips and semiconductors, and no, we're not just talking about any microchips like those in any old computer, but just the most advanced in the world. They need circuits with the highest performance. So where is the problem? Well, the problem is that the US is losing control over the supply of these technologies. In 2018, China surpassed the American giant in global semiconductor production for the first time. It is true that Chinese semiconductors are still not as advanced as American ones, but I can assure you that this has not been any consolation to the United States government. This is why the United States has decided to take action to try to reverse this situation. Joe Biden's administration wants to regain industrial power in the chips sector in order to ensure its dominance over China in the coming years. The question is, how can the government suddenly reverse the industrial loss it has been suffering for decades? The answer is money. Lots and lots of money. But what if we told you that Biden's plan could turn out to be a complete failure? Moreover, what if we told you that this would not be the first time the US has tried to corner the microchip industry with lots of money and failed miserably? In this video, we're going to explain the big problems with Biden's plan in the chip war, problems that could lead him to waste money, time, and power. You want to know what we're talking about? Then let's get into it. But just before that, using the internet without PIA is like playing hockey without protective gear. All it takes is one shot to hurt. PIA's VPN encrypts or scrambles your data so that it can't be intercepted or read by anyone who's not supposed to. It also masks your IP address, so your online actions are virtually untraceable. For example, while accessing financial data and apps. But there's more. Streaming platforms restrict their content depending on where you are physically located. Like, say you're planning to travel around Asia this summer, and you still want to keep getting into your favorite streaming platform. Private internet access helps you overcome these restrictions by giving you the option to change your IP address to one of 84 countries, as well as the choice of any one of the 50 US states, allowing you to gain access to websites and services that are only available in those locations. PIA is also available across all platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and many more, and you can use one subscription to protect an unlimited number of devices all at the same time. And best of all, for being part of the Visualeconomik community, you can grab an 83% discount on private internet access using the link in the description. That's just $2.03 a month, with 4 bonus months completely free. Don't miss out on this chance and protect your privacy now. As we've told you, Biden's public spending plan is not the first US plan to achieve dominance in the chip sector. Just 40 years ago, not China, but another Asian country, Japan, began to eat into the North American market at a rapid pace. Until the 1980s, the USA dominated almost 70% of the world's semiconductor market, making it the undisputed leader in this sector. With companies such as Intel and IBM, no one could compete with their technological capacity. However, in just 7 years, Japan began to ramp up its chip production. The Japanese giant went from exporting less than a third of the number of chips that the Americans did to matching them in the same period of time, causing the US to lose 30% of the global market in less than a decade. In the end, this is something that should not surprise us. Japan was the birthplace of great technology such as Nintendo, Sony, and Panasonic, and that was no coincidence. Be that as it may, the fact is that at that time, Ronald Reagan was the occupant of the White House, and faced with this situation, he declared a real trade war against Japan, a country which, ironically, was also his greatest ally in the region. Although, when it comes to strategic sectors, alliances are sometimes overlooked. The point is that Reagan launched a tough package of measures that included tariffs of up to 100% on Japanese electronics. But that was not all. Reagan also subsidized a consortium of public-private companies called Sematech, with more than $1 billion in today's dollars. This consortium had the objective of uniting, coordinating, and of course showering some of the largest companies in the sector with public money, companies such as IBM and Intel. The question is, did this plan work? Well, the truth is that the academic evidence available to us suggests no, not at all.
In the absence of Sematech, the government-funded technology consortium, the industry's investment to sales ratio would have been 11.2% instead of 10.3% in 1991. According to this interpretation, Sematech reduced industry R&D spending by 9%. It did not increase it. In summary, we estimate a negative impact of Sematech membership on R&D spending. Sematech, Purpose and Performance, Douglas A. Irwin and Peter J. Klenwo.
This is not all. It's not just that Reagan's plan didn't work, and in fact had the opposite effect to what he intended. The problem is that since then, the United States has only lost relevance in the global semiconductor manufacturing landscape. To give you an idea, while 15 years ago, the American company Intel produced practically 100% of the latest generation chips, today that figure is close to 0%, with the Taiwanese TSMC producing 80% and the Korean Samsung the rest. Intel has become a second-rate chip producer. Faced with this situation, the current president of the United States, Joe Biden, has launched a new plan to regain semiconductor dominance. In a sense, he has replicated the Reagan model, imposed tariffs on China to curb its development, and once again shower money on technology companies. The question is, will Biden's plan fail again, just as Reagan's failed? Well, to find out the answer, the first thing we must do is to understand the details of Biden's plan, to know its strengths and weaknesses. So pay close attention.
Biden's gamble.
Biden's chip industry support plan consists of 3 major projects that have already been approved by the White House. The first of these is the IRA, or Inflation Reduction Act. This law consists, in large part, of a gigantic investment of $370 billion in green plans. So what has that got to do with microchips? Well, a lot. Because electric car batteries, solar panels, and wind turbines are highly dependent on the latest semiconductor technology, and that could boost the demand and domestic production of these components. Along the same lines, the second project to promote microchips is an infrastructure investment plan that will allocate some $100 billion to projects such as power transmission lines or charging stations for electric vehicles. Again, infrastructure that requires a lot of semiconductors. However, the most important project of all is the third and final one, the CHIPS and Science Act. This law includes a $52 billion program focused on strengthening domestic microchip and semiconductor manufacturing. Basically, this law serves to directly subsidize semiconductor companies to make investments in the country. With these 3 ambitious projects, the US not only intends to beat China in the chip war, but also to obtain much cheaper electrical power, which in turn could increase the country's productivity and increase its overall economic dominance over the rest of the world. But let's hold on a minute. As we've seen with Reagan's trade war, it is one thing to write a check with lots of zeros and quite another to produce positive results. It is true that we are facing 2 circumstances with fundamental differences, such as the much greater risk that China represents compared to an ally like Japan, or the fact that Biden's plan involves a much larger amount of money than Reagan's plan. But it is worth stopping to remember that many of these projects may end up coming to nothing. Yeah, that's what I said. The investment of these macro projects could end up going down the drain. You don't believe me? Well, pay close attention to the following news item.
By now, it is clear that the CHIPS and Science Act, which includes a $52 billion splurge for the semiconductor industry, is unlikely to work as intended. In fact, its looming failure is a microcosm of all that is wrong with America's current approach to building things. Bloomberg editorial.
And I know what you're thinking. What could go wrong this time? Hasn't the US government learned from its mistakes? Well then, let's take a look.
Writing a check is not enough.
If Biden wants his plan to work, if he wants to win the chips battle, he cannot do so without first overcoming 4 major problems that threaten its success. The first major problem is the lack of manpower. No matter what kind of project we are talking about, microchips, infrastructure, or even cooking hamburgers, there will always be one resource that will be necessary in absolutely everything: hardworking people to carry it out. To give you an idea, it is estimated that 300,000 more skilled workers than are currently available are needed to complete the construction of the planned microchip factories alone. After all, as many of you probably already know, the United States is currently experiencing a historic moment with its lowest unemployment rate in 20 years. Not only that, but since the onset of the pandemic, fewer and fewer people are working in the country. Early retirements, later access to the labor market, and the lack of immigrants is starting to take its toll on the country. The most obvious solution to this problem? seems to be to relax immigration policy. In fact, the number of foreigners working in semiconductor-related sectors is already higher than the number of citizens. After all, the US is by far the country that attracts the most talent worldwide, especially from India and China. However, here too, there are serious problems. The procedures for granting new visas to immigrants are becoming longer and longer and less secure. To give you an idea, the editor-in-chief of the China Daily in the US, a newspaper belonging to the Chinese Communist Party's Central Propaganda Department, and no, we didn't make that name up, said verbatim that an improvement in the US immigration system would be a big challenge for China. An improvement in the US immigration system, at least for skilled workers, would not only serve to strengthen its own industry, but also harm China, which could see many of its best people leave to work in the US, never to return. Now, even if he were to get the necessary manpower, Biden would still have another major hurdle to overcome. That problem is environmental reviews. Reviews that could directly result in projects and money earmarked for industry never materializing into real investments. But what exactly are environmental reviews? Basically, all projects with any impact at the federal level, as in this case with large investments in the semiconductor industry, must pass a meticulous environmental impact report, including the construction of new factories or solar parks. We are talking about reports that can exceed 4,000 pages and that delay the more than 12,000 projects they analyze each year by an average of 5 years. Yes, that's right, a delay of 5 years. While these reports are being developed, companies cannot start laying a single brick in their factories. But do you want a more concrete example? The extension of a single bike lane in New York required a 1,300-page report that delayed the project by 2.5 years. Or for example, a $3 billion wind farm in Wyoming was delayed for 11 years. Come on! That's bureaucracy in all its splendor. Be that as it may, let me tell you that this is not even the worst of it. NEPA, which is the US environmental law, allows virtually anyone to request a review of almost any construction project. So if you see that a company is going to do a project and you want to get them in trouble, you can go to a government office and ask for an environmental report. Well, it turns out that numerous oil lobbies, which ironically are the only industry that has a special clause to pass more lax reviews than the rest, has taken advantage of this to constantly stall renewable energy projects. After all, one phone call is enough to get your competitor headlong into the hell of paperwork, licenses, and delays, many delays. What's more, these reports almost never have a significant impact. In fact, 98% of them end up giving the green light to projects with hardly any objections, but many years later, of course. Stalled projects and reports that in most cases are useless, a full-fledged scandal, a problem that, if not solved, may cause the entire semiconductor investment to take a decade to materialize, with all the cost overruns that this entails.
TSMC says US plant will cost more to build than expected.
In addition to what we have just mentioned, there is another key point that could increase the cost of investments, and therefore could make it difficult to attract and invest in the most advanced semiconductor companies. What are we referring to? Well, the laws that determine which companies will have access to subsidies and which will not follow criteria that, well, you could say that they don't have much to do with the manufacture of microchips, but with much more political or populist objectives. For example, any company that wants to order more than $150 million will have to pay for childcare for its employees. Preference will also be given to companies that invest in financing hospitals, nurseries, schools, or affordable apartment blocks. Similarly, preference will be given to companies run by women, war veterans, and certain other minority groups. In addition, by law, the new hiring of workers will be closely controlled by unions and other workers' organizations, despite the fact that the unionization rate in the US is barely 10%. Companies that want subsidies will have to assume all kinds of cost overruns, completely unnecessary ones, just for political reasons. Now, beyond the cost overruns, if a company does manage to make a lot more money than expected on its investment, it must give 100% of anything over and above its expected income to the federal government. And in addition, share buybacks are strictly forbidden for applicant companies. Crazy. All this, believe me, has not gone down well with investors.
It is not clear how they're going to calculate excess profits. They want to keep part of our profits when the business is booming, but not give us back the money when the sector is in recession. This will be a key point of contention. Yeo Han-koo, former South Korean trade minister.
And if you thought we were done, there are also limits to financing and profit. To give 2 examples, according to the White House, most of these requirements are mandated for the company's own good, making them more attractive to workers. But if that were the case, what would be the need to enforce them? Doesn't exactly seem like a good argument. At the end of the day, the Biden administration will most likely not only want to regain dominance in the semiconductor sector, but also pursue a number of secondary policies that, however legitimate as they may seem, will most likely end up eroding the competitiveness of the American power. As the saying goes, don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Finally, all the problems we have named converge into one: the strong nationalism of the new industrial policy. Joe Biden not only wants to reduce his country's dependence on China, but also on any other country, friend or foe. An alternative to regaining control of the chips could be for the US to invest in allied countries such as Mexico or Malaysia, where production would still be guaranteed, and where it would be much cheaper to produce. For example, the same microchip is 50% more expensive and takes 25% longer to manufacture in the US than in other Asian countries highly specialized in the industry, such as Vietnam or Malaysia. However, Biden prefers to devote his greatest efforts to local production. Developing domestic industry and creating jobs at home remains the #1 priority, however much that may compromise the dominance of the chip sector. Be that as it may, and given all this, it is now up to you. Do you think these problems will pose a serious obstacle to the ambitions of the United States? If so, what do you think they should do about it? Improve their laws or focus on investing in other allied countries? You can leave me your answers in the comments. And as always, don't forget that here on Visualeconomik, we release new videos every week, so subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell so you don't miss any of our updates. All the best, see you next time.